You are listening to the very realistic and imperfect Air Hug Community Podcast, episode 113. Hey, welcome everybody. If you are new here, and if you're not new here, welcome back. But if you're new here, I just want to give you the 411 on this podcast. This is the Air Hug Community Podcast, and you can also think of it as a midlife mojo discussion board. So in this podcast, we come together to talk about midlife. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, all the emotions. We talk about approaches for living better. We talk about all sorts of things. We bring in guests. And this is just something that was created as a need out of my business from Grateful Fitness of working with women. I wanted to have a place where we could come to talk about things further. And so this is the place. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's get after it. All right. So what is the shocking truth? Okay. So first of all, last week I tried to find a joke that had to deal with boundaries and find something for you. There was no joke I could find today that would hook you in. So we just have to get after it. All right. So, but what is the shocking truth I'm talking about? The shocking truth about happiness that I want to talk about today is that, I'm going to get right to it. Are you ready? And then we'll unpack it and talk about it. The shocking truth is that balance requires an absence of perfection. Just let that sink in for a minute. Because I know everybody loves to be a perfectionist. So what I'm going to ask for you to do here as you listen to this is to adopt a mantra. And the mantra that I want you to adopt is that balance, not perfection. So why do I say this? Because anytime, I'm going to talk from my life experience, okay, because that's all I can really draw on, right? But I think it's significant enough to share this, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this in 2022, and so I think it's time to share. But there are several life habits, and I would also call them attempts, that I relied on to be perfect. And so now I'm going to tell you about the ones that I have let go of to actually work on finding balance, not perfection. That mantra, balance, not perfection, in the name of trying to have a more contented life. Okay, so, and the reason that I gave up these perfection type behaviors is that they actually led me to burnout. So maybe I can spare you from getting there. Maybe you've already been there and you want to come back around. But here they are. Okay, so the first one is counting macros/calories. Now, the original reason I began counting macros was for bodybuilding, but years, maybe a decade before that, I had been into counting calories, and I used an app on my phone way back, God, probably in the 2000 zeros of something, those, anyways. And so my history of counting numbers for food goes way back, and it was definitely stressful. There were times where I felt like I couldn't take a bite of food without doing a math equation. Now, how ridiculous is that? All right. The next thing I stopped counting, and some of you are going to think this is blasphemous, but I stopped counting steps or trying to do step challenges or get in a certain number of steps per day. So I think, for someone who's a couch potato and they just want to move a little bit more, maybe that seemed like a good idea at the time. And yeah, it's definitely good to keep active and not have too many periods of being sedentary during the day. But those of us with perfectionist attitudes can just take it way too far, And really, what good does it do you to have 26,000 steps in a day if you are never recovering from it, right? So the next thing I stopped doing was feeling like it was a requirement that I had to exercise 6 or 7 days per week. And while I was doing this, I didn't count playing a sport as exercise. So things like tennis or golf or paddle, those are the 3 sports that I like to partake in. Like those would have to be done only after my workout was done. I couldn't get a golf game with people because I would be too busy exercising. I couldn't, I'd have to work it in, or I couldn't join a tennis league. In fact, I stopped playing tennis for a number of years. And the real reason I stopped playing tennis was because my workout regimen did not allow for it. Now, how sad is that? I really enjoy things like that. So the balance has been to work sports in and not feel like you have to do these things. So those are the 3 things that I actually strive to be more balanced at versus perfect, okay? And here's the thing, is that the old habits that I had and the rigidity around them did something to me. They made me have an all or nothing mindset. So either you were all in, go big or go home, right? I was either on my perfect macro plan or I was pigging out. I was either working out like ridiculously or rarely did I ever not work out, but I definitely could have taken that all or nothing mindset. Mostly it was just burning out. But I had such rigid attitudes and behaviors, so much so that it made me stupid. Yes, it made me stupid. How so? Well, number 1, I lost the ability to know and to detect certain feelings, okay? I lost the ability to feel hunger and fullness. I lost the ability to recognize exhaustion. And I forgot how it felt to be fully recovered before doing a workout. All of these things made me stupid. Like I no longer trusted my own judgment for any of these things. In fact, I dismissed my judgment as not knowing enough. I had to follow some rule, or I would come up with a plan and I would have to follow that, whether my body was up for it or not. So the other thing that happened was it really fed into guilt and shame. I would have guilt for breaking abstinence around hitting macros and eating certain foods. Every now and then I would demonize certain foods. And if I broke the abstinence, then I would have guilt. I also had shame for not having what I called a perfect body. I mean, now, first of all, a perfect body is in the eyes of the beholder, right? There is no perfect body. I don't know what a perfect body is, but I had this vision of a perfect body. And all these things made me unhappy on a very significant level. And it's taken me a long time to realize that I'll be happy when, and then you insert the blank, I'll be happy when I hit my macros. I'll be happy when my waist is a certain size. I'll be happy when I wear a certain size. I'll be happy when, I have a bicep vein. All those things never made me happy. They only made me realize there were even more things about me that I wanted to control and to fix. So what happened when I gave up perfectionism was that I actually gained acceptance. I gained self-acceptance, body acceptance, but more than anything, I gained unconditional happiness. My happiness is not based on a certain condition, right? So, first of all, I want to tell you that this continues to be a work in progress, and it is something that I work on day by day. So, but what happened when I gave up trying to be perfect? Well, first of all, what didn't happen was I did not gain weight. I did not become weaker or flabby or skinny fat, okay? And I am more at peace with myself. I do not have anxiety about going out to eat and figuring out what should I order on the menu. I do not have anxiety about driving around my cart, my grocery cart, I call it driving, in the grocery store because God forbid someone should see that I buy a food that's not perfect. I used to have it all planned, when I was in that perfectionism. If I had something in my cart, I would say, well, my husband eats this. Like I couldn't even admit that I might eat something that wasn't a perfect food. So here is the biggest point that I would like to say, the take-home point. Look, we all want to improve our health, right? Because obviously our goal is to live as well as we can for as long as we can and then die fast, right? Nobody wants to have a long, lingering illness where your quality of life suffers, right? I think we can all agree on that. So the first thing that I came to realize is that healthy living is an inside job. All right? We created the problem of perfectionism in our head, and we can solve that problem of perfectionism or the all or nothing mindset or playing the victim mode where we think we can never be perfect, so we'll just throw up our hands in the air and quit and just give in to binging on shit food. So, and I apologize if you can hear my dogs. They are having a lovely old time playing over here. Guys, can you be quiet? No. All right, I'm going to hit pause and let them go outside and play. Okay, I'm back. Where were we? Healthy living is an inside job. Right, so the problem of perfectionism really started within our mind, and we can fix that within our mind. It's definitely a self-perception problem. And what I want to say is we don't want to go to those extremes, right? I love to think of perfection as one end of a spectrum and being a victim at the other. Like, I can't possibly ever eat healthy or exercise or do anything like that. And those are two extremes when really balance lies somewhere in the middle for all of us, okay? And so I would really caution people with the problem of trying to be a high achiever. And also, I would like to caution people, like if you are in a gym situation or whatever, don't call someone a high achiever if they're doing more than what they should, all right? Because you may be feeding into a perfectionist problem that may not be serving them very well, all right? It could be eating them up from the inside, all right? I can tell you, I was definitely victim to that. No, victim isn't the right word because victim is the other end of the spectrum. But I was definitely in that if a little bit is good, more is better, so much so that I would end up grinding my teeth and having horrible stomach pain. And these thoughts took up hours and hours of time that I could never recoup. Thoughts about how am I going to eat well? How am I going to fit this exercise in, with this or that? Or what am I going to order when we go out? And oh my God, we have to go to so-and-so's house. They're not going to make any food that is going to fit into my neat little perfectionist capsule. So here is my suggestion. If you want to be happier, accept that perfection is a myth, all right? Stop trying to control too many things, especially outcomes. The best you can do is the best you can do. Agree to, if we're talking about food and exercise, agree to eat healthy and to move and be safe in what you do to move, but don't let it eat it away from you. Don't be so rigid in your behaviors, right? Yes, I want you to exercise consistently. And yes, of course you want to eat like veggies on half your plate, but you don't want to be like crazy about it. And yes, you want to eat protein every day. I get that. I'm not saying not to do that. It's not all or nothing. Hey, of course it's wonderful to get your workouts in and eat your healthy food and get your steps in and all of those things, but you don't want to do it at the expense of feeling so stressed and that it takes up so much of your mental bandwidth that you're just in a big ball of knots. That's what I'm talking about, okay? So here's the thing. I like to say never, right? Because never will I say that I'll never eat a food again, except sardines. I will never eat sardines because I don't care how healthy they are. They taste like shit. Sorry, just between you and I. Okay, but my point is let's aim for balance and not perfection. And here's a little thing. Let's put this into perspective. The higher the pedestal that you put yourself on, the more severe the crash will be when you fall off, and you will fall off. because nobody can stay on the perfection pedestal for very long, period. I don't know why I said period, because I do a lot of dictating instead of typing on my computer when I want to send emails and write things. But anyways, I hope this helps you, because I just want us to be happy, and I think so many people think that happiness comes from the perfect body, the perfect waist, the perfect number on the scale, right? All these things, and it doesn't. It comes from within. And living a balanced life is going to give you far more happiness than living a rigid life will ever. And listen, do you want to be the person who at your funeral, they're like, oh my God, yeah, she looked great, but she was always so tense. And everything was always about, trying to keep up with her crazy habits. I'm not going to say health habits, because they really weren't healthy. So that's just my thought for today. And last week we talked about boundaries, because you do have to set some boundaries. And for some people, boundaries are set in place so they can learn actually how to eat, when they're hungry and stop when they're full. But last week's boundaries were a lot more about mental health and saving your mental health, right? And this week is also about saving your mental health, but it's about trying to learn how to live in balance so that you can enjoy life and not wait to be happy for some fictional point in time when you achieve some fictional perfection, unrealistic achievement. It's just not going to happen. So listen, I hope this is great. I hope this helped you. And if it did, please feel free to share it with a friend. I will be back next week. I will tell you that I am toying with the idea of going to an every other week podcast, because as we're talking about perfection, I had made this goal to publish every single Tuesday come hell or high water. And sometimes it's coming to hell or high water. And so I may actually just try to restore a little bit of balance in the life of Judy Arizosa and put this podcast on an every other week regimen versus every week. But I will let you know if and when that happens. Thank you for listening. As always, I appreciate your lending your ear and sharing this with others for whom you think this might be helpful. Ta-ta for now. And just one more thing. I want to pop in and say I am not going back to edit this episode. So if you hear any ums or mispronunciations or ahs or awkward silences, they are staying right in there in the name of balance. Because what I'm saying about this podcast today is that done is better than perfect.